Hey everyone, and welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Man, has it been a roller coaster start to 2025?
Hmm.
The S&P 500 just can't seem to make up its mind. The Dow just took a 750-point plunge, and even those tech giants like Nvidia are feeling the heat. Makes you wonder where to even look for stability, right?
It definitely makes you think about risk tolerance. And in times like
Uh,
these, a lot of investors, they look towards the healthcare sector. Historically, it tends to be a bit of a safe haven during market turmoil.
Yeah, healthcare is always a good one to keep an eye on. But even within healthcare, there are companies that really keep things interesting, like the one we're diving into today, Altimmune, ticker symbol ALT. They're a clinical stage biopharma company specializing in treatments for metabolic and liver diseases. Sounds promising, but
Mhm.
the question is, are they a hidden gem or a potential pitfall?
Well, they're definitely at a crossroads, with the potential for massive growth, but also facing some real challenges. To unpack all of that, we've got a few different angles to consider. We'll be looking at Altimmune's latest Q4 2024 earnings report, some expert technical analysis of the stock, and the overall trends affecting the biotech sector right now.
Okay, so let's start with those earnings. What jumped out at you? Anything that really caught your eye?
The first thing that pops out is they actually beat earnings per share expectations. They reported a loss of 33 cents per share, while analysts were expecting a loss of 34 cents.
So technically a win, but still a loss overall. Not exactly a cause for celebration, is it? What about their revenue?
That's where things get a little more interesting. Their revenue was practically non-existent this quarter, only $5,000 compared to $37,000 last year.
Ouch, that's a massive drop. Is that a red flag for investors?
Not necessarily. Remember, Altimmune is still in the clinical stage, meaning they're pouring most of their resources into research and development. They're not focused on generating sales just yet. But it does highlight a critical point, their cash situation. They ended the quarter with about $132 million in cash, and they're burning through around $22 million each quarter.
Okay, so that's the ticking time bomb investors need to be aware of. How long can they keep the lights on with that burn rate?
That's the million-dollar question. It puts pressure on them to either find more funding soon through partnerships or less, ideally through diluting their stock with an offering, or to start generating revenue. And that all hinges on their pipeline.
Speaking of pipeline, their lead drug candidate, pemvidutide, seems to be generating a lot of buzz. What makes this drug so potentially groundbreaking?
It's the drug's dual action potential that has everyone excited. It's being developed to treat both obesity and MSH, which stands for metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis, essentially a serious liver disease.
So tackling two major health issues with one drug, that's a pretty big deal,
Right.
especially given the obesity epidemic and the rising prevalence of liver disease. But how close are they to actually bringing this drug to market?
All eyes are on the Phase 2b IMPACT-T trial results for pemvidutide in MASH, which are expected in Q2 of this year. This is the make-or-break moment for Altimmune. If the results are positive, we're talking about a potential blockbuster drug.
Yeah, and it sounds like some investors are already placing their bets.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we see some unusual options activity around Altimmune recently?
Absolutely. Back in December, there was a huge surge in call options for ALT. Basically, a call option gives you the right but not the obligation to buy shares of a stock at a specific price by a specific date. This kind of surge usually indicates that investors are betting on the stock price going up.
So they're essentially putting their money where their mouth is, hoping that pemvidutide is going to be a hit. But options trading aside, what about the technical analysis of ALT? What's the stock chart telling us?
Well, like many biotech stocks, ALT has had a wild ride over the past year. The 52-week range is pretty dramatic. It's been as low as $5.28 and as high as $14.84.
Talk about volatility. That's a pretty wide swing. So which way is the wind blowing right now? Up or down?
Well, unfortunately, the recent trend has been downwards. The stock is currently trading below its key moving averages, like the 50-day and 200-day moving averages, which is generally seen as a bearish signal. However, the Relative Strength Index, or RSI, which measures the momentum of price changes, is sitting right in the middle of its range. It's neutral, not oversold, not overbought.
So the technical indicators are giving us mixed signals. The recent downward trend isn't great, but that neutral RSI suggests things could go either way. And we've got that earnings beat, but also a dwindling cash pile. So much to consider here.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to look at all these factors in context. The EPS beat might give the stock a short-term bump, but ultimately the market is going to be laser-focused on those MASH trial results in Q2. You know what's really interesting about Altimmune? They embody a lot of the bigger trends we're seeing play out in the biotech sector right now. It's like a microcosm of what's happening on a larger scale.
Cool. I'm intrigued.
Hmm.
Tell me more about that. What parallels are you seeing?
Well, think about it. We're in the midst of this incredible ways of scientific innovation. New technologies are popping up left and right, and they're opening doors to treatments for diseases that were once considered untreatable. But all this progress comes at a steep price. Developing these new drugs is incredibly expensive, and the regulatory hoops you have to jump through are getting more complex all the time.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Incredible potential, but also enormous costs and hurdles.
Exactly. And that's why we're seeing so much consolidation in the biotech industry. Smaller companies, especially those that are still pre-revenue, are getting gobbled up by larger companies. And we're also seeing more partnerships and collaborations as a way to share the risk and the cost of drug development.
That makes sense. It's a classic case of strength in numbers, especially in such a high-stakes industry.
Precisely. And this brings us back to Altimmune and that whole partnership question. They haven't announced any major partnerships yet, which makes their cash situation even more precarious.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and it got me thinking, can you paint a picture for our listeners of what a strategic partnership might look like for Altimmune and why it's so crucial in this situation?
Imagine you're a big pharmaceutical company. You have tons of resources, experience, and a global reach. You see the potential in Altimmune's pemvidutide, but you also understand the long and winding road of bringing a new drug to market. It's a risky, expensive gamble.
So instead of going it alone, you come in and essentially offer Altimmune a lifeline.
Exactly. A partnership could involve a direct financial investment in Altimmune, helping them fund those crucial late-stage trials and commercialization efforts. It could also mean sharing expertise in key areas. Think clinical development, regulatory strategy, marketing, and distribution.
So it goes beyond just money. It's about tapping into a network of knowledge and experience that Altimmune wouldn't have access to on their own.
That's the real game changer for a small biotech company. Partnering with a big pharma player can give them the credibility and resources they need to actually bring a promising drug to market and make it a commercial success. Without that support, the road gets a lot tougher.
Okay, so partnerships are clearly a big deal in this industry, but for Altimmune, it really all boils down to those phase 2b IMPACT-T trial results for pemvidutide in man-AH, right?
Those results are the ultimate litmus test. They're expected in Q2 of this year, and they'll determine whether pemvidutide lives up to all the hype or falls flat. The stakes couldn't be higher.
And it's not just about Altimmune, is it? The entire field of MAH treatment is watching closely.
That's right. MASH is a growing problem, and the need for effective therapies is only becoming more urgent. If pemvidutide is proven safe and effective, it could be a monumental breakthrough, not just for Altimmune, but for patients all over the world who are suffering from this disease.
But on the flip side, if the results are disappointing, what then?
Well, that would be a major setback, not only for Altimmune, but for the hope of finding new and better MAS treatments. Their stock would likely take a hit, and they would need to reassess their entire strategy.
So it's a nail-biter for sure. When those results come out, what are the key things investors should be looking for?
The first thing I'll be zeroing in on is the efficacy data. Did the drug actually work? Did pemvidutide significantly reduce liver fat, improve liver function, prevent the disease from progressing?
That's the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Does the drug deliver on its promise?
Absolutely.
Right.
But efficacy is only half the story. Safety is just as critical, especially when we're talking about a chronic condition like MASH.
Yeah.
I'll be scrutinizing the safety data. Were there any serious side effects? Was the drug well tolerated by the patients? You can have a drug that works wonders, but if it comes with a laundry list of side effects, it's not going to be a viable long-term solution.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What else will you be analyzing?
I'll be comparing pemvidutide's results to existing MASH treatments that are already on the market, as well as other drugs in development. It's not enough to just be effective. You need to demonstrate a clear advantage over the competition.
It's all about context. How does pemvidutide stack up against the other players in the game?
Right. The MASH treatment landscape is getting crowded, so Altimmune needs to show that pemvidutide is a true standout. These trial results are going to be a treasure trove of information, not only about the future of Altimmune, but about the future of MASH treatment as a whole.
It's like we're witnessing a real-life biotech drama unfolding. High-stakes, fierce competition, and the tantalizing possibility of a major medical breakthrough. But, with all this talk about science, financials, and market dynamics, there's one thing that keeps coming back to me.
I'm curious. What's that?
Well, it's the human element of all this. We can talk all day about stock prices and clinical trials, but at the end of the day, there are real people out there suffering from MASH who are desperately waiting for new treatments. Their lives are hanging in the balance.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers. But we can't lose sight of the human impact of this research. Behind all the data, there are real people whose lives are being touched by this disease. For them, it's not about quarterly earnings or stock valuations. It's about finding relief, improving their quality of life, and having hope for the future.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that companies like Altimmune have a responsibility that goes beyond just making profits. They have the potential to make a real difference in people's lives.
It's about finding that balance between scientific innovation, financial success, and a genuine commitment to patient well-being. That's what true success looks like in this industry.
Beautifully said. It's a good reminder for all of us investors, researchers, and everyone in between to keep that human impact at the forefront of our minds. It's amazing to think about the impact a single company like Altimmune can have, not just on patients' lives, but on the whole biotech landscape. It really makes you appreciate the ripple effect of innovation.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how Altimmune's story mirrors the challenges and opportunities facing the whole sector right now. It's like a microcosm of what's happening on a larger scale.
All ears, break it down for me. What are the big picture trends that Altimmune's journey is highlighting?
Well, as we've been discussing, we're in this era of unprecedented scientific breakthroughs. New technologies are constantly emerging, and they're revolutionizing how we approach disease treatment. We're talking about the potential to cure diseases that were once considered death sentences.
Yeah, it's like the future of medicine is unfolding right in front of us. It's incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. But this rapid innovation comes with a hefty price tag. Developing new drugs is a complex and incredibly expensive endeavor. And the regulatory hurdles, the hoops you have to jump through to get these drugs approved and onto the market, those are getting higher and more complex all the time.
So it's a high-stakes game. And only the companies with the deepest pockets and the strongest scientific foundations can really compete.
Exactly. And that's why we're seeing this wave of consolidation sweeping through the biotech industry. Smaller companies, especially those that are still pre-revenue, like Altimmune, are being acquired by larger companies with the resources to shepherd these promising treatments through the development pipeline.
So in a sense, it's about survival of the fittest.
You could say that, and that's another reason why strategic partnerships are becoming so crucial in this sector. They allow smaller companies to tap into the resources and expertise of larger players, sharing the risk and the rewards along the way.
And that brings us full circle back to Altimmune. Their future is hanging in the balance, largely dependent on the outcome of those Phase 2b MASH trial results.
Those results are going to be the pivotal moment for them. If pemvidutide proves to be a success, it could catapult them onto a completely different trajectory. They might become an acquisition target, attract more investors, or even secure a lucrative partnership that gives them the financial stability and support they need to thrive.
But if the results are a disappointment, they could find themselves in a very precarious position, struggling to stay afloat in this competitive industry.
It's a make-or-break moment for them. And that's the nature of the beast in the biotech world. High risk, high reward. It's a roller coaster ride full of exhilarating climbs and stomach-churning drops.
Well, folks, there you have it. We've explored Altimmune from every angle. Their financials, their lead drug candidate, the technical analysis of their stock, the broader trends shaping the biotech sector, and the importance of strategic partnerships. It's been an insightful journey.
It's a reminder that investing in biotech requires not only a strong stomach for risk, but also a deep understanding of the science, market dynamics, and the long game that drug development often requires.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's all about informed decision-making. And speaking of informed decisions, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Altimmune. Do you think they're a buy, sell, or hold? Head over to our website or social media pages and share your insights. We always appreciate hearing from our listeners. And if you found this episode valuable, please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to share with your friends, family, or anyone who might be interested in navigating the fascinating world of biotech investing.
Until next time, happy investing, everyone.